Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're exploring something that is just incredibly fascinating. We are looking at the hidden, quiet behaviors that actually reveal a highly unique mind. And look, I'm not talking about being book smart or showing off how much you know. We're talking about something way rarer. Something that operates completely under the radar, entirely in private, when nobody is around to applaud.
So let's just dive right in. Psychologists say that if you possess even 3 of the 7 habits we're about to cover, your brain is actually wired in a way that less than 2% of people will ever experience. Less than 2%! That's tiny. And honestly, the craziest part? You probably had absolutely no idea that these quiet little quirks were actually evidence of a highly functioning mind.
So, Section 1, the illusion of intelligence, redefining what it means to be smart.
And this really perfectly illustrates an uncomfortable truth that psychology has actually known for decades. You see, society generally thinks of public intelligence, right? Getting perfect grades, collecting trophies, dropping massive vocabulary words at dinner parties, or aggressively winning arguments on the internet. But private intelligence? That's a whole different ballgame. Real intelligence almost never shows up on a stage. It hides. It whispers. It essentially works the night shift inside your own head when nobody's clapping and absolutely nobody is grading you. It's not louder, it's not flashier, it's just fundamentally different.
Moving on to Section 2, embracing uncertainty and opposition. This covers habits 1 and 2.
All right, so our first habit is called epistemic patience. Now, the average mind absolutely hates uncertainty. Literally hates it the way your body hates holding its breath. It panics. It grabs the very first half-decent explanation lying around and slams the case shut just to feel secure. But if you have epistemic patience, you do something that feels almost unnatural to most people. You let the question breathe. You turn it over in your mind, maybe for days. And brain scans actually show that when you do this, it lights up regions of the brain that most adults never fully activate. So while everyone else sprints towards closure, your brain is holding on to contradiction without breaking. That's not indecision, folks. That is true intellectual gravity.
Which brings us to habit number 2, active self-opposition. Look, most people spend their private alone time cheering for themselves, right? Replaying arguments they won in the shower or polishing the trophy of being right. But you build the strongest possible case against your own opinion just to see if it survives the test. You stress test your own beliefs. This is literally the exact mental engine behind every major scientific breakthrough. Darwin did it. Einstein did it. And doing this alone, with zero audience to impress, that shows incredible intellectual courage, which is frankly almost extinct today.
All right, Section 3, decoding your inner data. This brings us to habits 3 and 4.
So habit 3 actually starts with these exact questions. Listen, anyone can feel angry or anxious, right? That's just being human. But almost nobody stops dead in their tracks and asks themselves, wait, why this reaction? Why this intensity? Why right now? You aren't just a passenger merely reacting to your emotions. You actually stop and rigorously interrogate yourself.
It's like you act as your own internal detective. You don't just sit with the immediate reaction in the present moment. Instead, you trace an emotion backwards. You go from earlier today to maybe last week, or maybe all the way back to your childhood, literally following the trail to find its true source.
Now, there's a word for this, metacognition. And most humans never really access this in their entire lives. You see, you aren't just feeling things, you are decoding them. Think of it kind of like this. Most people are just passengers inside their own feelings, just getting driven around wherever the car goes. But you're the one holding and reading the map. Seeing your emotions as signals rather than these uncontrollable storms, well, that separates reactive brains from genuinely intelligent ones way more than any standard IQ test could ever hope to.
And that flows perfectly right into habit 4, cognitive flexibility. Highly intelligent people, well, they don't revisit old memories just for nostalgia. They revisit them for upgrades. Imagine you're just doing the dishes or driving home and suddenly, bam, you realize what that painfully awkward comment from 8th grade actually meant. Hell yeah, we've all got that one. Or maybe a piece of advice you completely ignored at 22 finally makes perfect sense at 35. Your mind is actively reorganizing your life story in the background, upgrading the meaning of your past, sort of like a writer constantly editing a novel so it just keeps getting better. Up next, Section 4, the value of useless curiosity. This is habit 5.
Okay, tell me if this sounds familiar. Have you ever found yourself falling down 3-hour rabbit holes about totally random topics? I'm talking things like octopus cognition, the incredibly complex way they baked medieval bread, or, I don't know, the weirdly intricate details of how the postal system worked back in 1847. And you can't even explain why you're looking it up. There's absolutely zero transactional payoff. You aren't trying to impress anybody, you're not fixing a problem, you just have a brain that is profoundly, deeply hungry.
Well, psychologists actually call this intrinsic intellectual drive. And this so-called useless curiosity, it isn't useless at all. It is literally the fingerprint of genuine intelligence. Seriously, every person who ever changed the world started with an obsession that nobody else understood. Those weird, obscure rabbit holes aren't distractions. They are the raw material of a mind that absolutely refuses to be average.
Moving right along to Section 5, Real-Time Intellectual Agility. Habit number 6.
You know that moment when you're halfway through a sentence, maybe you're speaking out loud, or maybe it's just a thought inside your own head, and you suddenly stop and just say, wait, no, actually, that's not right. And then you just completely pivot. No ego check, no flinching whatsoever. You just don't feel this desperate need to defend the version of you from 4 seconds ago.
Because see, the average mind commits to a mental direction and will ride it straight off a cliff just out of pure cognitive momentum. They would much rather be consistent than correct, just to protect their ego. But an agile mind, it pivots mid-thought. This is such a quiet superpower that, honestly, school doesn't teach and work rarely rewards. You are willing to be wrong for 4 seconds so that you can be right for the next 40 years. You're upgrading your mind while everyone else is just busy protecting their ego.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, the ultimate quiet superpower, Habit 7. Okay, so our final habit is called autonomous cognitive engagement. Now, what does that mean? It means you genuinely enjoy your own mind as company. You're not just tolerating being alone, you are actually entertained by your own thoughts. Taking a long, quiet walk without a phone feels like an absolute luxury to you, not a punishment. A quiet evening without constant stimulation, that feels like coming home. Basically, you stop confusing endless digital stimulation with actual deep thinking.
And the science backs this up. Psychology links this exact trait, autonomous cognitive engagement, to some really incredible benefits. We're talking higher abstract reasoning, far stronger emotional regulation, much deeper creativity, and, interestingly enough, a razor-sharp BS detector in social situations. Because when your own mind is good company, you stop needing other people's noise just to feel okay. You become the rarest kind of person in a totally noise-addicted world, someone who can actually hear themselves think. So the really crucial takeaway here is this. These 7 habits don't necessarily make you better than anyone else, but what they do is make you legible to yourself. They take the quiet, maybe weird, why am I like this parts of your inner life and turn them into hard evidence. Evidence that your mind has been doing some serious, heavy lifting this entire time. As the source material says so perfectly, real intelligence has never lived on a stage. It lives in the kitchen at 2 a.m. or on that walk you took completely alone. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. If even 3 of these habits felt like someone was literally describing your own brain back to you, well, what pattern are you finally recognizing about yourself? I'll tell you right now, that's not a coincidence. That is your quiet intelligence finally making itself known. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep enjoying that absolutely fascinating mind of yours.